The year was 2016. Pokemon Go was released and people were no longer just staring at their phones on the toilet or on the couch. They were now driving around with their phones, going to parks, public places, and all over the place staring at their phones. On top of that, 2016 was the year Harambe was taken from us far too soon. And of course, the movie of the year was Captain America: Civil War. This was also the year where Call of Duty was very nearly killed by one bad might not be the right word, one horrible trailer. Now, I think it's really important to not just look at this trailer, but to talk about how we really got to Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, because up until the year 2014, Call of Duty was known for one thing: being a shooter spanning various different time periods, from Modern Warfare to the Vietnam War to Call of Duty Ghosts, which is kind of like this post-apocalyptic story. But one thing was true: people were getting sick of boots on the ground. The same game over and over again with a different setting, different guns, different streaks, and Call of Duty needed one thing, and that was innovation. And then in the year 2014, Sledgehammer Games came along and completely changed the way that Call of Duty was played. The way that I like to say it was played was now with pogo stick movement. All of a sudden, you could had this exosuit where you could jump way up into the air, and the way that you play the game was completely changed. And whether you like that game or not, supply drops were introduced, the game was completely changed as a whole. Some people say that is when skill-based matchmaking was introduced, but as a whole, the game felt completely different. And with this new innovation, it brought back new and returning people to the franchise. And just 1 year later, at least in my opinion, Treyarch perfected that advanced movement. All of a sudden, it wasn't this pogo stick movement, but this really fluid movement and kind of momentum-based movement strategy that included wall running, boost jumping, an exosuit once again, but felt smooth and complete. And as a whole, I will say this: I think Black Ops 3, maybe not at launch, but throughout its life cycle, was one of the best received Call of Duty games ever to be released. There was little intricate details like the fact that there was challenges for leveling up each individual specialist and unlocking essentially skins and camos for those specialists. On top of that, there was weapon camos. Dark matter, of course, was a thing. But on top of that, little smaller details like supply drops, yeah, people really didn't like. But as a whole, with the advanced movement of this game and the way that it was played, people seemed to really enjoy it. However, at the same time, there was seemingly a dark side to this. People were missing old school Call of Duty. They were getting sick of that advanced movement. And at the same time people were enjoying the game, they were wanting something different. And really, that didn't come to light until a trailer came along on May the 2nd, 2016. 4 million dislikes. Now, I want to be clear, at the time, this became the most disliked video on the platform, and quickly it became a trend to just go to this video and dislike it. So yes, those numbers are inflated, but at the same time, a lot of people were seeing this trailer because of that. But the question is, why was it so hated? And I think there's a couple easy ways to look at this. First of all, as this plays in the background, I want you to pay attention to what is going on here. This is a time when people were sick of advanced movement, sick of futuristic shooters. And all of a sudden, not only was this a futuristic shooter, but there were spaceships, people shooting from spaceships, and as you're going to see, going into outer space. But again, I think it goes much deeper than this, because as a whole, I also just think this is a very horrible trailer. Unlike most first-person shooters that have quick jump cuts, tons of different weapons, gameplay mechanics, and things like that, keep in mind, this was a gameplay reveal. And check this out. We are at 33 seconds into the trailer. 33 seconds into the trailer. Keep in mind, most reveal trailers are about a minute to a minute and a half long. This one is 3.5 minutes long, which first of all is very long. 30 seconds into this is, number one, the first time we see any characters whatsoever, and also the first time we see a weapon. But on top of this, we still haven't seen any first-person gameplay, or for that matter, anyone fire a weapon. That's coming up, but it's going to take about another 30 seconds for that to actually happen. But as you can see, what we are seeing is very slow, very long cuts. They're not quick, jumpy cuts. There's not a lot going on over and over again, which we are going to compare and contrast. These are quite literally scenes from the game. Oh, by the way, there you go. About 52 seconds, we have our first weapon actually fired and our first actual first-person look at the game. But again, at this point, we've had to wait nearly a minute to see any gameplay or any first-person weapons whatsoever, but more of the frustration is certain to be coming. You're going to see why I say that in a second, because as of right now, looking at this, okay, we have a futuristic shooter. We haven't seen really any advanced movement or anything really crazy on that front. But very, very quickly, that is going to change in a very drastic way, because as we see planes come in, which is not that crazy, we've seen Harriers before, we've seen Black Ops 2 at this point, nothing has been too crazy. That would be until our character gets into the airplane, because at this point it looks like he's about to fly a Harrier, but as we know, that is not the case, because the next thing that we see isn't on planet Earth whatsoever.
You got eyes on this, Reyes?
We are in an outer space fight.
Let's get in there.
And all of a sudden, a first-person shooter does not look like a first-person shooter anymore. It looks like we are in an outer space simulator where we are going to be flying spaceships. And for the remainder of this trailer, essentially what we see is outer space battles. We are no longer on planet Earth. This is no longer a grounded game whatsoever. This is now an outer space milsim, if you will. So yeah, Call of Duty went in the exact opposite direction that people was wanting it to go. People wanted a grounded, modern, or in other words, old school Call of Duty game. And we were now getting, in the next year, a advanced movement, super futuristic outer space shooter. It gets worse than this, because people didn't want this futuristic shooter. What they wanted was a grounded, old school Call of Duty game, and finally Activision was realizing that. So what were they going to do? They were going to give the community this.
Lock and load. Stay frosty.
Pre-order the Legacy Edition and get Modern Warfare Remastered.
So not only did Activision give us a trailer for a game that nobody wanted at the time, they gave us the game that we actually wanted, with the only way to get it being buying the highest edition of the game that nobody wanted. So of course, people were going to hate that trailer even more for taking away the thing that they actually wanted. Now, the launch of this trailer was just one issue that Call of Duty Infinite Warfare would face over the next year, and things would only get more and more difficult. By the way, if you like these type of retrospective style videos, it's kind of different than the story videos or news Call of Duty videos that I normally do. So if you like this kind of thing, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and the more likes these video gets, the more likely I am to do more videos like it. But as I mentioned, May 2nd, 2016 was the day that the Infinite Warfare trailer came out. And at this point, everyone was already beaten down on the trailer. And then 4 days later, on May the 6th, the world got this. A minute and 28 seconds of a masterpiece of a trailer from EA, something that you wouldn't hear very often. But this is the Battlefield 1 trailer. Now, this was huge for many reasons. First of all, just in the first like 10-15 seconds of that trailer, you can already see, compare, and contrast the difference between this trailer and the Infinite Warfare trailer. First of all, it was less than half the total amount of time. The action was fast-paced, cut way better, and put to a way better song. On top of of that, it wasn't a futuristic game. It was a game grounded in reality in a setting that people really don't normally see. And that, of course, being World War I. It was exactly what people were asking for out of Call of Duty, but this time EA was doing it with Battlefield 1. And here's the problem. Throughout 2016, Battlefield 1 wasn't going to be the only competition that Call of Duty was going to have that year. On top of Battlefield, we also had Overwatch, a game created by Blizzard to be a hero shooter, which became a very big and one of the most popular games that year, adding in even more competition for Call of Duty that year. But on top of that, ex-developers of Call of Duty over at Respawn and also working at EA would launch Titanfall 2. Now, just to be clear, I think Titanfall 2 got screwed by releasing so close to Battlefield 1 and could have been a much bigger game than it was, but again, taking audience away from Call of Duty. And for the first time in a very long time, Call of Duty was really put on the back burner compared to these other games. Now, Call of Duty, Activision, and Infinity Ward held on to Infinite Warfare throughout the year. Some say Infinite Warfare was actually one of the best Call of Duty campaigns ever made. I slightly disagree with that, but the multiplayer is pretty much universally disliked by most within the Call of Duty community, but you can let me know what you think. But throughout the year, these slowly made their way through, and by the end of the year, they made their way and flipped 180 degrees, with the next year being Call of Duty World War II. Quite literally the opposite style game that we saw with Infinite Warfare, and really as far away from future warfare as possible. Now, looking back on this year, it was the closest to life support that Call of Duty probably has ever been. From a shaky development and behind the scenes having turmoil, to a game that really wasn't necessarily a bad Call of Duty, but one thing we can all agree on, it was definitely not the Call of Duty people were looking for. But looking back on all of this, it is crazy to think that this all started with just one bad trailer.